16 seconds.
There we go. Hello, everyone. Hello, Dylan Black. I see you there. This is Nimsy and Fiveable's AP Chem Reader Chat. My name is TJ Dortch, and I'm joined here with Todd Abranowitz. Todd, say hello.
Hello, Todd.
And we are going to be here for the next hour. And do me a favor, on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a little chat, and I'm seeing some of you guys saying hello. Please do me a favor. Take advantage of the chat room today, and how about everybody do me a favor and type in what grade you want to make on the AP exam on Thursday. Type in the grade that you would like to have on well, 10 is not possible, but 5's good, good, good. Excellent. Okay, now type in the grade that you think you're going to get. There we go. Okay. Excellent. No, you're not going to get a 0, Angelina. Okay, but the next question is very serious. I want everybody to either write in one of 3 words. Pick, file, or copy. And what that stands for is, are you planning on doing copy and paste when you take the test on Thursday? Are you planning on uploading a file, so put file, or are you planning on doing a picture and doing most of this on your phone? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. The majority of people are going to do their phone. That's what my kids said as well, and you guys are experts at the phone, so I totally agree with you, okay? One thing that I did here, and bear with me, I'm a little bit older than you guys, but you guys need to go to settings on your phone. You need to go to camera, and then you need to go to formats. And right now, mine says high efficiency. You need to go to most compatible. Okay, so depending on the year of your phone, you need to do that. So you need to go to settings, camera, formats, and then switch it from high efficiency to most compatible. Okay, gotcha, thank you. The other thing is, when you're on your camera, you do not want to be on the live picture. Okay, where it kind of takes a little bit of a motion picture first. You have to have that turned off. So live off. I am an expert at scrolling for hours on my phone, not transferring files with it. Yes, I know. So make certain that you guys have also done the demo. Okay, Todd, I'm actually going to give you an assignment if you don't mind while I'm talking here. Is there any way that you could find, if you could put the link to the demo, the AP Chem or AP demo on how to practice uploading and taking the exam? If you could go ahead, and that's right, JPEG is available for the pictures, yes. But if you could put that in the chat so that they could have that option. Okay, so a couple things. So the path was, you go to settings, you go to camera, you go to format, and then you take it off high efficiency and you do most compatible. Okay, most compatible. And then also take it off the live video when you take the pictures. Okay, just to introduce myself, my name is TJ Dortch. I'm from Edmond, Oklahoma, and this is this would have been my 25th year of teaching. So it got kind of canceled a little bit earlier than I would have liked. And I have taught AP chemistry for 20 years, and I am an AP Chem reader. And this is a different year this year. You guys are going to be taking the test at home on your phones, and it's only going to be 45 minutes. You guys do know there's 2 questions. First one's going to be 25 minutes long. You're going to have 5 minutes to upload your answer. And the second question is going to be 15 minutes long, 5 more minutes to upload your answer. Well, it's different for you guys. It's also different for us, the readers, this year. We actually are going to be grading the test for the first time at home. So we are going to be at home sitting at the kitchen table like I am right now, and we are going to be grading and loading up your tests. And so I will be grading all of those pictures that you guys upload. So make certain that you take good pictures, make certain that you are taking it in good light, and you're supposed to upload them in order from page 1 to page 2 to page 3. Obviously, at the very top of every page, you're supposed to write your ID number, your initials, and I think that's it. You're supposed to write page numbers on each page as well, okay, so that we can follow along with you, okay? Todd, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Todd Abranowitz. This is my 30th year of teaching. We're still teaching. We have remote teaching, but we have 4 classes a day, every other day, block schedule. This is the 30th year for me teaching, 27 years teaching AP Chemistry. TJ and I are both AP consultants, so we train teachers on how to teach AP Chemistry.
And Todd has a book that, go ahead and throw that out there so that they all know that you're the author of.
If you are using the Zoomdoll textbook and the Fast Track to a 5 that goes with it, I'm one of the 2 authors on the Fast Track to a 5. Yes way, Rosemary.
What? Celebrity, that's right. Okay, do we have to name the picture like I don't think so. I don't think you would have to. I think it really just says upload image and then it just sends it right out. I don't think you have to name anything. Once again, guys, this weekend, do the demo. Everybody practice, okay? That's my homework for my kiddos this weekend is everybody practice the demo. And it's a live demo. You guys will have to actually fill out, you'll see the screen of what you're gonna see on Thursday, and then you can actually practice uploading a picture, okay? And it'll show you if it works or not. And obviously if it doesn't work, that's why we're practicing this, okay? Okay, so let's go ahead and start off, and I'm going to share my screen with you guys. I think you guys can see this. We are on social media at Think5able. So if you guys would like to follow them, please feel free. A couple things tonight. Let's be nice. Go ahead and meet other students from around the country. Ask questions. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a little statement there that says ask a question. That is the question parking lot, and when you click on it, you can ask a question. And what's going to happen is other people are going to be posting questions along the time frame too, and what you can do is upvote other questions. Like if you, yes, that's the question I was going to ask. Well, you can upvote it, and we will be answering all the questions, okay? If you want to comment on other kids' questions, like if I'm not answering any of the questions and you know the answer to that question, feel free to help out, okay? So answer other people's questions and post good resources, share any tips or tricks that you guys have as well. Okay, so I want to start with ATQ. Todd, would you happen to know what ATQ stands for? Sometimes we actually throw another letter into this acronym.
I won't put the other letter in, but you better answer the question.
That's right. Answer the question. Okay. You guys would be surprised how many kiddos don't answer the question. They go ahead and give us all the evidence, all the reasoning. Everything looks great. It's great chemistry. They never said if they agree or disagree, or they never said it will increase, decrease, or remain the same. Okay. I know you guys get nervous, and so you're trying to throw down as much chemistry as possible, but always please remember to answer the question. If you do answer the question, show your work. If it's a calculation, please show your work. You would be surprised how many kiddos get the right answer and get absolutely no points whatsoever. Okay? If we see the right answer and absolutely no work, you get no points whatsoever. Okay? We just assume that you cheated. And this year, they're really going to assume you cheated because obviously you guys have, this is a different situation and they are very concerned about cheating, okay? So no work, no points whatsoever. You got it, even if it's the littlest of thing. I always tell my kids, If you are going to type something in the calculator, then whatever you just typed into the calculator needs to be on paper. Okay? Obviously, little things like, let's say you're converting POH to pH, 14 minus 2. Sometimes you don't have to show that, okay? But I will say this, pH calculations for certain. You cannot solve for X, which is H, and then just write down, therefore pH is 2.14. You need to show me how you got your pH. You need to show me how you got from X to pH. So you need to write down negative log of X and show me how you got the pH, okay? There's little things that even as teachers on the board, when we're working out problems, we finally get X and I just say, okay, negative log number, and then I just write down the pH. Well, if I don't write down negative log X on the screen, then I would not get credit, okay? So show your work.
Do want to remind everybody, for this particular exam, there will not be any pH. That's pH is included in Unit 8, and Unit 8
Correct.
is on the exam. So show your
Correct.
work. Yes, realize pH not going to be on the test.
No acid base, no delta S, delta G, and no galvanic cells as well.
And because there's no delta S or delta G, I am pretty much guaranteeing you that there will be delta H, because that is one of the main laughing.
Yeah.
Main ways that we can actually figure out if you know your thermodynamics. It's the same equations, so you can expect a delta H problem. We'll get into the rest of what
there will be thermo. There will be kinetics. There's definitely going to be an equilibrium problem on there. There's definitely going to be an intermolecular force question on there. And they're going to sprinkle in some atomic structure in there, and there's always, always, always a stoichiometry problem on there. Speaking of those types of problems, don't box your answer, okay? I tend to, when I'm working out problems on the board, when I finally get to the answer, I myself tend to box the answer. But if you box your answer on the AP exam, that is your permanent answer. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're working out and you got all this math down here and you get to an answer of 20 or something like that. But if I, the reader, happen to see the correct answer somewhere in your work, okay, I will take that answer. But if you box the 20 answer, that is the wrong answer, I have to go with the boxed answer. So I know it's tempting, so when you're done, to box your answer, but I would recommend that you do not do that, because unless you know absolutely for certain that that is the correct answer. But if you don't box it, because I might go looking for the correct answer. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Significant figures. Do we use significant figures on the AP exam? You betcha. You betcha. So always just attempt to apply sig figs. Okay, it's not hard to just try and use sig figs. If you read a question and every single number has 3 sig figs, guess what your answer has to have? 3 sig figs. Okay, now it's only going to be assessed on one question, and typically it's a lab question. Typically it's a measurement question, like reading a Buret. Okay, but if you don't want to worry about sig figs, when in doubt, just go with 3, okay? Here's another thing, and I'd like to hear Todd's approach on this this year, and they have given out some practice exams this week, and the practice exams were very, very long, and they did say that time is going to be an issue, and typically time is always an issue on the AP exam, but more so this year, I think, than any other year, because you only have 45 minutes. I'm kind of thinking you might want to take the kind of ACT approach. If you see a big, long passage, you might want to go straight to the question, read the question, and then if there's information that you need from the passage, go get it, okay? Which I normally would not recommend that to my kiddos in a normal test situation. Every year at the end of the AP read, the very first thing the chief reader says is, kids don't read, kids don't read, kids don't read. I don't really know if you're going to have much time to read this year. Todd, what's your take on that?
I would actually do exactly what you suggested. I would look at the questions and realize, and this has popped up in the parking lot, you can do the test in any order that you want. So find the easiest questions for you that necessarily, because the question is going to be built around a central topic. The practice exam that they posted was built around one of the questions, phosphate. So there might be a KSP involving phosphate. You're not comfortable with KSP, jump to the Lewis dot diagram involving phosphate, answer that. Just please label the parts that you are doing. So if you're doing D first, label D and then go back to A later on. But I would agree with TJ. Read the question, go look at the information that you need.
And by the way, just to let everybody know, as AP Chem readers, as all readers, we are trying our best to give you guys points, okay? We are trying to do, that's why I said earlier, don't box your answer, because if I see the right answer anywhere on your page, I'm going to try and find a path that shows me that you tried to get the right answer, and I'm going to give you credit, okay? We are always trying to give you guys credit. Okay, so don't fight that. Also, yeah, like Todd said, skip the questions. If you don't know how to do it, if you know it's going to take a long time, skip it. Go to the ones that you know how to do. Get all the free points that you know how to get first. Then go try and work out some of the more complicated ones. Okay, a lot of the questions will say justify your answer. Okay, there's going to be a question. Is this going to increase, decrease, stay the same? Justify your answer. Anytime I see justify your answer, I think of a clever statement. I make my kids write a clever statement. I want you to be clever about your answer. And you guys have heard all this before. That is claim, evidence, reasoning. Okay? Claim, evidence, reasoning. Claim, by the way, is the answer. Remember ATQ, answer the question. So, which element, phosphorus or chlorine, has the higher first ionization energy? Justify your answer. Well, the claim is going to be chlorine. Okay, there's the claim. There's the answer. Answer the question. Here's the evidence. Even though both phosphorus and chlorine have valence electrons in the same energy level, chlorine has more protons than phosphorus. That's our evidence. So we've got claim, we have evidence. That's not enough though, because, okay, you have the right answer. You did tell me that chlorine has more protons. So what if it has more protons? Therefore, chlorine experiences a stronger nuclear charge, leading to a stronger Coulombic force of attraction, with the valence electrons requiring more energy to remove. Okay? While I'm at this point right here, do you see how I wrote CFA, Coulombic force of attraction? We understand what that is. You could write LDF, London dispersion forces. We know what that is. Okay, so feel free to write those abbreviations down. So let me go back once again. So claim, evidence. Evidence is typically data, and reasoning. Clever about it. Another way that you could approach a justify your answer is the CCA method. And Todd, you're going to talk about this one, aren't you?
Yep. CCA stands for compare, contrast, answer your question. So the problems are going to be a little mini compare and contrast essay that you would write in English. And most of the questions now, especially the intermolecular force questions or the periodic trend questions, they're asking you to base your answer on the intermolecular forces in both species. So they're telling you, you compare and contrast them. So explain why the first ionization energy of aluminum is less than the first ionization energy of magnesium. When you're doing ionization energy, the first thing that you should do is draw your error diagrams, because you need to talk about removing electrons. So the first electron removed in aluminum is located in 3p. The first electron removed in magnesium is located in 3s. That's my comparison. Now I'm going to use the contrast. I'm going to do contrast. The 3s electrons penetrate closer towards the nucleus, or they have a greater probability of being located closer to the nucleus than the electrons in 3p. And I'm going to use that contrast to answer my question. Therefore, it takes more energy to remove the 3s electron, or the 3p electron is least tightly held by the nucleus and takes the least amount of energy to remove. Any of the three will get you credit. So you can do clever, you can do CCA. If it talks about explain why the first ionization energy aluminum is less, and then you tell me in the answer, well, this makes the ionization energy of magnesium larger, I can live with that answer.
Yeah, also on something like this, don't just answer the question in terms of just magnesium, okay? Tell me about magnesium, but also tell me about aluminum, especially in intermolecular forces. If they're asking which one's going to be more soluble in water, tell me about the intermolecular forces of the two comparable molecules, but then also tell me about the intermolecular forces of water, okay? Todd, I'm seeing a lot of questions blow up in the chat. I saw one that I would like to address. I think it said, if you write two answers down, which one do you go with? Okay, that's a good question. So sometimes kids write too much and they get the answer, and then I keep reading, and then they shoot themselves in the foot. Okay, and so what happens is we hold up fingers. Okay, he gets the 1 point. And then I keep reading, and boom, then I took that finger down. Okay, you lost the point. So as long as your second statement doesn't contradict your first correct answer, you're fine. If you just write some garbage chemistry down that does not kill your first answer, we're just going to ignore it. But if you write a statement that totally contradicts your correct answer, then we take that point away. Okay, and we're gonna take all questions in just a little bit. All right, so don't worry, we're gonna get to those questions. Okay, so a couple other things that I just want to give you some tips. Handwriting, boys, handwriting. Okay, it has to be clear, legible. Okay, I need to be able to read it. Now, we are very giving at the reading. So if I read some boy's handwriting, and yes, I'm saying boys, if I read somebody's handwriting and I'm trying and I just can't read it, then I ask the person to the next to me, say, hey, what does this say? I can't understand that. And if they can't read it, then we go to somebody else. We get like 3 or 4 people trying to read your handwriting. But I'll say this, on day 6, when I'm really tired and I pass to somebody and they still don't, I'm telling you, at some point in time, we're going to say, I don't see the right answer there, okay? So please do your best to write nice and clear. Try to write down your units, okay? Once again, abbreviations, IMF, LDF, CFA, we know what that means. Yeah, and by the way, no, we won't be sitting next to each other because we're going to be in different locations this year when we grade the exam. Answer the specific question first. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is it going to stay the same? And then give me your evidence and reasoning. Okay. Oops, I just went too far. Names of specific elements and compounds. Okay. If you're talking about the reactants, if you're talking about the products, try not to use the word it, because it is going to refer to the last noun that you just talked about, okay? And a lot of times it is not what you're trying to talk about. If you're talking about iron, say iron. But if you're talking about iron to ion, an iron to positive ion, you need to mention that, okay? They're two different things. Let's see. Yes, mass and volume. Don't just say size. They have a large size, okay? Well, mention radius, mention volume, mention mass. What are you talking about, okay? Be specific on that. Refer to specific data or the graph in particular. Explain how that data, and a lot of times the question will say, explain how the data shows that this is an endothermic reaction. Well, go to the data. They're giving you a hint. Anytime you see something in parentheses on the AP exam, that's a hint. They're always giving you hints. Okay. If you see a thermo question and it has the word bond in the question 5 times, that is a clue that you're going to do bonds broken minus bonds formed. Okay. They are trying to help you out. Particle view diagrams with ions and polar molecules need to be oriented in the correct orientation so that the positive end of water is attracted to the negative ion. If they ever say include units in your answer, that means you have to include units in your answer. So yes, that does kind of mean that all the other ones, you don't necessarily have to have your units in there. Okay, we don't take off. We frown at it, but we don't take off points. But if the question specifically says include units in your answer, obviously you need to include your units, okay? Show me your complete dimensional analysis. If you could show me the dimensional analysis and show me the units canceling, we love that. You put us in a good mood. We want to give you points, okay? And then obviously try to always use the correct number of sig figs. Answers that are only referred to the substance and data included in the prompt. Oh, and here's a great one. This one comes up all the time. Don't tell us that the prompt is wrong. Okay? If the prompt says that it's second order, it's second order. Don't say, well, the prompt is wrong. It can't be second order. It's only first order because blah, blah, blah. Don't say that. The prompt is not trying to trick you. Nobody on this exam or on the exam board is trying to trick you, okay? Analysis of given data in a thoughtful way that is based on chemical principles. Now, they said that the math this year is going to be fairly light, that you should be able to do this without a calculator. You might have to describe your math. And that's not easy to do. Some of my smartest kids, I'll say, how did you come up with that answer? And they can't explain it. They can't explain that they used the molarity and the volume to get the number of moles, and then they did a mole-to-mole ratio, and then they took the number of moles and divided it by the volume of that. They can't explain that. You know how to do it on the calculator. I just press the buttons. You know how to do that, but you cannot explain your math. So you might have to explain your math this year. Let's see, use deductive reasoning to make conclusions or approximate values when the terms estimate or justify. There's probably going to be a question about a lab error. Anytime there's a lab error, like some of the chemicals spewed out of the crucible back to the data. And I bet there's going to be a data table there. And tell me if some of the chemicals, some of the hydrates spewed out of the crucible, what piece of data is now different? And then follow that piece of data, follow that through your calculations to answer what's going to happen to the answer. It's going to be oh, and here's another thing. Here's what my kids do all the time. The question will say, how is this going to affect your results? Okay, my kids always say this: it's really going to affect the results. Guess what? You never answered the question. Is it going to be too large, too small? Is it going to stay the same? How is it going to affect the results? Okay, ATQ. Answer the question, please. Okay, I think we did make it to questions. Okay, so we were going to take the next half an hour, and we are going to take any questions that you have. Todd, I have not been able to see the question parking lot. Is there questions here in the parking? Oh, here we go. Here we go.
And I have
you already, didn't you?
But there is several that showed up in the lovely chat about if we write down two answers, and we're not certain which one is which,
we go with the first. Yeah. Typically in the past, we go with the first answer. Okay. Let's say you worked out a calculation twice and you didn't buy your answer. And I see two mathematical dimensional analysis setups. I see two answers. Nothing's boxed. We would go with the first answer. Okay. Now, if it's an explanation and you give me two answers and you explain the answer correctly, we give you the point. As long as your second part of the answer does not contradict your first part, we will give you the credit. Okay. What do you think is most likely going to show up on, yeah, sure, let's play that. I love that question, okay? All right, Todd, I'm going to do one, and then you're going to do one. Here we go. I think on this year's test, there's going to be a question on Lewis dot diagrams where they give you 2 or 3, and you have to tell me which diagram best represents that molecule based on formal charges. We're not going to ask you guys to draw Lewis dot diagrams this year or finish off Lewis dot diagrams. So their way of getting around that is they're probably going to provide the Lewis dot diagrams for you, and you're going to have to tell us which one is the better representation based on formal charge. That's one of that I am thinking is going to be on there. Todd?
Definitely you will have an intermolecular force question on the test. There's been at least one for the last decade on every free response test.
And if you haven't noticed patterns lately on the test, they always ask a question where London dispersion forces can actually be stronger than dipole-dipole forces and hydrogen bonding. Okay, so if you have a very large, massive molecule that has lots of electrons, it's going to have, and it's a nonpolar molecule, it just has London dispersion forces, but because it has so many electrons, it's very polarizable. Its London forces can actually be stronger than dipole-dipole forces or hydrogen bonding forces from other molecules. Okay, another prediction. There's an ice chart problem on there. There's going to be an equilibrium problem on there.
There'll be a kinetics question, and it may be dealing with the justification of the reaction being first order based on the half-life that's provided. That's been there 3 of the last 6 years. And remember, first order half-life is independent of your starting amount.
So look at Dylan. His chemistry from last year. Kinetics with the graphs. That's absolutely correct. Good job, Dylan.
And just remember that half-life's independent of your starting amount for the half-life. That's how you know it's first order.
By the way, let's talk about that real quick. There's 3 graphs when we're talking about kinetics and we're talking about determining the order. Let's say they put up 3 graphs and you're trying to tell me what the order is for the rate law. Okay, let's say you say it's first order. It's first order. And the question says, justify your answer. Here's what all my kids do. Because it's most linear. Number 1, didn't I say not to use the word it? Okay, what is it? It's most linear. The graph of natural log of concentration of A versus time is most linear, which is consistent with first order. Okay, don't just be very short with your answer. It's the most linear. What's the most linear? Okay, be very clear in your answer.
And speaking
now, the other thing,
TJ, just a second. Speaking of being clear, ladies and gentlemen, on the graphs, make sure that you are clear. CLR. Concentration, LN, reciprocal, 0, first, second order. So as long as you graph concentration versus time, you get a line, it's 0 order. LN versus time, first order. Reciprocal of concentration versus time, that's second order. CLR, alphabetical order, 0, 1, and 2. Another thing that popped up on the chat, yes, there's a equally likely possibility of having a mechanism question where you have to justify the mechanism, or they're going to do it with half-lives. Either one, take your pick, we don't know. There may actually even be a very simple rate law table where you actually have to calculate the orders, because you can do that without a calculator as long as the numbers are extremely simple. Think multiple choice, not full-blown free response.
Yeah, Perla, there's never going to be a quadratic on there, so don't worry about that. Okay. There's going to be a delta H question on there. There's 5 methods for solving for delta H. They are Q equals MCAT. There's products minus reactants. There's Hess's law. There's stoichiometry. And there's one more, bonds broken minus bonds formed. Okay. One of those is going to be on the test this year. It's that simple. Now, how do you recognize that? How are you going to recognize Q equals MCAT? Well, they might mention coffee cup calorimeter. they might show you 2 temperatures. If there's 2 temperatures, that's a change in temperature. That's Q equals MCAT. They might also mention specific heat, okay? So that one's really easy to recognize. How are you going to recognize if it's products minus reactants? Well, you might see enthalpy with the little f there, the enthalpy of formation with a little degree symbol there. They would also have to give you a chart, okay? They would also have to give you data. The easiest one to recognize is Hess's law. Hess's law is going to be where you see multiple reactions that do have a delta H value, and then you have to go about and switch and maneuver the reactions to get to the one reaction that you do not know the answer to. And then bonds broken minus bonds formed. That is the easiest one to recognize also, because the question will have the word bond in it multiple times. Bond, 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 bonds. The hardest one to recognize is stoichiometry. So how do you figure out if it's stoichiometry? You just go through your process of elimination. It's definitely not Hess's. I don't see 2 temperatures, so it's not Q equals MCAT. I didn't see the word bonds whatsoever. And I don't see anything about data tables about products minus reactants. Now, go ahead, Todd. Your screen is gone, but can I still hear you? Yeah, there you are. Okay, good.
The screen's on, so you can't see me?
You're on now. I can see you now.
Oh, great. For the delta H, remember alphabetical order. If you're dealing with delta HF values that they give you, it's products minus reactants, MNOPQR. If you're dealing with bonds broken minus bonds formed, broken minus formed, both in alphabetical order. Very common mistake is to do the bond energies, products minus reactants. It's always bonds broken minus bonds formed. And if you have bonds broken, you're always putting energy in to break the bond. Energy always comes out when you form the bond.
Yeah, somebody mentioned titration is after unit 7. That's acid-base titrations, okay? Titrations are still fair game on the exam. That's in unit number 4, okay? So yes, that will possibly be on there as well. Hey, every test in the past 4 or 5 years, there's been a question, can you read a Buret? Can you read a Buret? The volume on a Buret? And does everybody know what the last number on a Buret reading is supposed to be? Not 0, Kristen. It's supposed to be a guesstimate. Okay, a guesstimate. If you see that the meniscus is somewhere between 18.1 and 18.2, then you need to guess what it's at. 18.15, 18.13. Yes, uncertainty. Okay, so tell me what you think. So that last number is always a guesstimate, and that's where we get sig figs. Okay. Whether just for Chem or if you can speak on this generally, how will scoring and curves work this year? You know, every year it's there's kind of a base score and they kind of fluctuate and move it. I really have no clue. Matter of fact, we have an AP reader chat that I'm part of, and we still don't know how they're going to go about scoring this one this year. This is new territory for everybody.
Let me mention something on titrations. You will have you could have redox titrations. It's not part of unit 9, but you can have a redox titration. And when you're doing titrations, if you are given diagrams and you're asked to figure out which diagram matches up with what part of the titration you're in, remember that the equivalence point is the point at which the limiting and excess reactants will actually switch jobs. So if you are having a redox titration, you are adding from the Buret into the flask at the bottom. So Buret, flask at the bottom. The flask at the bottom is your excess reactant. As long as you're before the equivalence point, you always have to have that substance that's in the flask. The Buret's the limiting reactant. You're not going to have any of it. It's going to all be products. But if you get past the equivalence point, what's in the Buret is now your excess reactant. What's in the flask is your limiting reactant. You shouldn't have anything that's in the flask left in solution if you're past the equivalence point. How do we know the equivalence point? That's the point at which they're stoichiometrically equal. Normally, we would say that the equivalence point is when the moles of acid and moles of base are equal, but that doesn't work for a redox titration where we say the moles of what is oxidized, the moles of what's reduced are equal, stoichiometrically equal, in case the equation's not 1-to-1.
Okay, I see a question that says, can we answer the free response out of order? For example, can we do part C, then F and G? Absolutely. You can do that. It's a little frustrating for the readers, but what I would recommend is before you even take the test, go ahead and number your pieces of paper. Question 1, A, B, give some space, C, give some space, D. And then you can always erase, and if there's more, obviously you can add more, have lots of paper available. And then you can just skip around and answer A, then go to an answer C. But yes, if you just start on your page and start with C, write your answer, start with F, write your answer. Yes, we're not going to take off points for that, okay? We might sigh a little bit when we see that, but we're still going to grade you, okay? Also, hey guys, this year is a special year. It's a different year. You can make cheat sheets, okay? You can make cheat sheets and you can put all your notes out and just have your table ready with everything ready on the go. Don't rely on that so much. You don't have a lot of time and just say, oh, I can use my notes. This is going to be easy. You're not going to have enough time. But if there's one thing, let's say, oh, what is the half-life equation for first order? We'll have your kinetics right there. There it is, 0.693 divided by K, okay? How many points is the exam out of this year? It's just 2 questions. We really don't know how many points it's out of.
Make sure that you guys have your periodic table and your formula charts printed off and ready to go. So you know that you're going to need those. You can have the cheat sheet. Usually the long question, how many points is it usually out of? The full test is out of 100 and what would have been this year 120 points. Normally in the past it was out of 100 points. But this test, we have no idea.
Is KA on the test? No, it is not. But I will say this. They have done things in the past where they could put a KA problem on the test and just ask you questions in terms of equilibrium. Okay? They could give you a KA problem, not ask you anything about acids and bases. They would just say, take this equilibrium situation, and maybe they call it KEQ, but it's an acid-base question. Okay, the equilibrium might be an acid-base setup, but they're just not going to ask any questions about acids and bases. It would just be on equilibrium. Speaking of equilibrium, everything is going to come around to Q versus K. There's always a Q versus K question on there. And also another thing, in terms of reading, let me see if I can share my screen. I'm not very tech savvy here. Let me see, close that. And I'm going to share my screen, Chrome tab, and that guy right there. Okay. Okay, hopefully you can see this, and let me see, I'll try to make it a little bit bigger for you guys. Boom, boom. Can you guys see this now? Okay, so let's say you're writing, well, Q, why won't it let me write? Here we go. Q is larger than K, therefore, the reaction will proceed to the left or in the reverse direction, increasing my reactants, decreasing my products, okay? So I want to point this out. Can you do all these abbreviations like this? Absolutely. Matter of fact, please. What kids do instead is they write a big, long paragraph. Okay, this is not an AP Lang exam. You do not, nothing in the instructions will say you have to use complete sentences. Okay, when you write a paragraph, the first thing I do when I start scanning your paragraph is if I don't see Q versus K, Q is larger than K right here, then I'm probably not going to be giving you any points. Then once I find, okay, they mentioned Q is larger than K. They mentioned this right here. Now I'm going to see, do they mention anything about the reactions shifting to the left or the reverse direction? So then I look for that. Okay, so what? Did you ever answer the question? Am I going to increase my reactants or decrease my products? Okay, so this is kind of the stuff that we're looking for on the AP exam. Questions about that? Okay.
Dennis wants to know if we need to show the conversion between milliliters and liters and joules to kilojoules.
That's a great question. You don't necessarily have to show it. That one can just pop up. Okay. That's kind of one of those, you know, some kids just move the decimal 3 times, and so you don't necessarily have to show it. But I will say this, if you're doing stuff like that, you better be writing down your units. If you're going to solve for joules and then switch it to kilojoules, that's fine. You better show the units so that we know what you're talking about.
It doesn't matter which periodic table that you use. Use the one that they would provide on the exam for you normally. It's posted on the College Board website on AP Central. Use that periodic table. Yes, some of the molar masses are slightly different. And speaking of molar masses, go to as far as the periodic table that they give you goes to. Don't make H1. It's 1.008 on that periodic table. You go that far. Carbon is not 12, it's 12.01. You go out as far as they give you for your molar masses.
And your should have given you a copy or a file of the official College Board periodic table. But even if they didn't give you one, just Google it, College Board periodic table. It'll pop up, and print it off so that you have it.
And your formula, the 2 pages of the formula constants and the charts.
And by the way, the 2 pages of the equations, you can write on them this year. You can add stuff to them. Put whatever you want on there. Make a cheat sheet, okay? I see a question that says, can we go over how to answer lab free response questions and what info we need to look for to get as many points as possible? That's a good question. Typically on the lab questions, there's going to be calculations. If you see a data table and there's multiple numbers, I guarantee somewhere in there you're going to subtract something, okay? The mass of the container in the sample, and you're going to have to subtract that to get the mass of the sample. Well, guess what you're going to have to do with the mass of the sample? You're probably going to have to convert it to what? Moles. 98% of the time, what do we do with grams? We convert it to moles, okay? But most importantly, in the lab question, the lab error. And we talked about that earlier. And if you have a question about lab error, always go back to the data table. Which one of those numbers will be affected by that error? And then what you want to do is you want to go from that data that's messed up now and walk yourself through the calculation to show me what's going to happen. Anything else on that, Todd, for labs?
No, go back to the data table. If they give you an error, figure out what that affects, and then you walk that through all the calculations. I call it the error analysis waltz. So you do, if some of the sample splatted out of the crucible, that would cause the mass after heating to be too low, which would cause the mass of the water to be too big, which would cause the moles of the water to be too big, which would give you a bigger empirical formula. It's just the waltz right through the data. I'm going back through the chat and checking other questions.
Yeah, it says if we answer all questions on one paper, can we just turn in one file, or does each question have to have a different piece of paper? You're going to have to upload one for question 1 and one for question 2. Okay, so if you want to answer all of question 1 on one piece of paper, that's fine. Turn that in. But you're going to have to answer all of question 2 on a separate piece of paper. Yes. People taking. I don't want to take this time right now to talk about other people taking the test for you and all the cheating ways. I'd rather talk about chemistry. So. Any other questions? What happens if a student has internet failure during the test? I've read something. There's going to be either an email or a phone number, and after you're done, you're going to contact them and you're going to explain what has happened, and they are going to decide if you get to take it again or not.
Do we have to draw any graphs? I seriously doubt you're going to have to draw graphs because people don't have graph paper at home. They can't give you a graph to complete. It's not. You got to realize that the exam wants to be fair to everybody around the world, and realize also, here's the advantage that you guys have. If you are taking this exam in Beijing, you're taking the exam at 3 a.m. If you're taking this in Tokyo, it's actually Beijing's 2, Tokyo's 3, and Sydney is 4 a.m. in the morning. Everybody in the world takes this exam exactly the same time. They want to make sure the test is equitable and fair to everybody, which is why the math is going to be 4-function calculator. You don't need a graphing calculator to do this. You don't need a scientific calculator to do this. You don't have graph paper, so people aren't going to have that. They're going to give you the graphs and say, what order is this? What does this graph show you? Is this reaction ex or endothermic? You're not going to be completing graphs.
I see a question that says, do we have to write out the formula before plugging in the values? No, you don't have to. If you just plug in the values, then we imply that you know what the formula is. So let's say PV equals nRT. You don't have to write PV equals nRT and then plug in all the numbers. If you just plug in the numbers for PV equals nRT, then I assume that you know what PV equals nRT is. Okay, and that might save on some time too. Cali people chilling. Hey, you Cali people have to wake up by 11 a.m. and I know that my kiddos have been struggling with that. So, but I think ours is 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock, Todd. It's Central.
1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern, and it goes back from there. And it puts the exam in Hawaii and Alaska at 8 a.m.
Hey, this is much better than the 7:45 that we normally do it in the morning. So. And we're probably going to do a little review session in the morning before the test, which will be nice. Do you guys have any other questions?
Somebody asked, what would you study for the last 3 days or 4 days? What book or study guide?
Well, Todd, I think there's a pretty good study guide book out there. Do you know what I forget the title of that. What is that again?
If you have the fast track to a 5, I would go through that, leaving off the chapters dealing with KA, KB, and thermodynamics. But most of the released AP free response questions that you can do 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, those would be good to actually go through. And on AP Central, the scoring standards are already there also, so you can do it, practice, check your work. If you guys have cram passes, the unit reviews are very good.
Okay, somebody had a question. It says, I have noticed that there are some secret points for some questions. It's not necessarily secret points. It's just when you answer a question, let's say they're asking for the pressure of 3.2 grams of a certain gas at such and such temperature. Well, the first thing you have to do is convert grams to moles. And that's part of the process. And you have to show that before you plug it into PV equals nRT. And what happens is after they do all this, then they go back and say, okay, how many points do we want to assign for this question, this question? Well, let's assign 2 points to that question. One, just for showing us how to convert grams to moles. I totally agree with you. I wish that they would say, here's the question. It's going to be 1 question or 1 point for you showing me grams to moles and 1 point for doing PV equals nRT. I wish it wasn't so secret. That's a great question. But yes, and that was another question. A kid said that, what about showing molar mass if you're converting grams to moles? Do we need to show that? Absolutely, you have to show me that. I don't want ghost numbers. Do you guys know what ghost numbers are? Ghost numbers are numbers that just pop up on your paper. I have no clue where they came from. Actually, I know exactly how they came from, but I have no trace. There's no trace of where that question or that number came from. And so I just assume that you cheated. Okay, that's that pH question. You did this big old ice chart, you get X, and all of a sudden pH is 2.4. Well, you never showed me how you got there. Okay, show your work.
The other thing on that, if they give you the molar mass, and this is generally in the past because this year is a little different, but if they give you the molar mass in the problem, you're not going to get a point for figuring that out or showing really the conversion to moles because they're giving you the molar mass. They're sort of leading you. But if they don't give you the molar mass, then you pretty much are going to get a point for writing down the molar mass and showing a conversion.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this year they'll probably just give the molar mass to help you guys on time. If they didn't, no, you don't have to show us how to add up the molar mass. That's a good question, Dennis. You don't have to show that you're adding 2 oxygens and 3 hydrogens. No, just write down molar mass.
And use it in the problem correctly.
Right. Are you allowed to take the exam on an alternate date if you are unable to take it next Thursday? You know what? That's one of those questions you might just have to ask College Board. I think what you're supposed to do is, what is it, Todd? Not take it and then send a request to take the alternate?
There is a set list of what is allowed for you to be taking the alternative exam in June. That is a campus question dealing with your AP coordinator.
I see a question. Do we have to know scientists like Dalton's theory, Thompson's? No, I haven't seen anything like that on there in a long time, and they've kind of avoided those questions since then.
How do we round in the middle of a calculation? DJ, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, just round at the very end. Do all the math and round at the very end. Specifically, every time you do a calculation, you're supposed to do sig figs. But if I were you, I would just work the whole thing out, and then at the very end, take your answer and apply sig figs to it. Now, if it's addition or subtraction, don't forget that goes by the number of numbers after the decimal when you add or subtract them.
The 5% rule really is not going to be on your exam this year. It applies to acid-base equilibria and the amount of ionization. We're not going to have it. You don't have to worry about it.
It could be in KSP if they talk about adding a salt to a solution that already has a certain amount. So, but yes, there is the 5% rule. If you have a K value that's smaller than 1 times 10 to the negative 5th, at some point in time, you can do that little cheater step of crossing out the minus X or minus 2X.
Yes, Rosemary, in the past, believe it or not, students have tried to stick money. They stuck money in their booklets. It didn't help.
Yep.
And it just goes to a big pot at the end, and the chief reader picks a favorite charity, and there goes the $500 and whatever dollars that were donated.
Or they go to something else that we use at the very end of the reading.
Can't do that this year.
Actually, quite honestly, if you put a piece of paper, like if you have your answer and you put a dollar bill and then take a picture of it and send it to us, that would be actually pretty funny. All right, hey guys, it's 7 o'clock. Our time is up. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Todd, and thank you to Fiveable, and thank you to Crowdcast. Good luck. Take the weekend to start studying. You've got less than 1 week. We can do this. Oh, by the way, did you guys know that if this was the normal year, you'd be done? The test was last Thursday. It was yesterday. All right. Hey, you guys have been great. Great questions. Thank you so much. Good luck. All right. And I need to end broadcast.